Meantime, to Republican presidential candidate, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, who says that the president's doctrine of strategic patience isn't working. Senator, not a fan of this, huh?
Oh, no, it's clearly not working. Here's the dynamic our country faces. We're reducing our military to all-time lows by 2021. And I asked General Dempsey, have you ever seen more terrorist organizations with more safe haven, capability, men, equipment, desire to attack the homeland than any time before 9/11? And he said, no, this is the highest threat level against the United States since 9/11. And our response is to come up with a strategy that's not working in Iraq and Syria and to cut our budget. This is really nuts.
All right, now the president's talking about reducing these overall troop levels in the next few years, as you know, and they would still be at or around the levels they were at the height of the Iraq and Afghan wars. Now, the numbers are going to be down, obviously, from that, but they're pretty high to that level. In other words, their argument is they're still quite high, and we're not knee-deep in Iraq now. We're not knee-deep in Afghanistan now. What do you say?
Well, I just met with the Chief Staff of the Army, and he said if we get down to 420,000 troops, there'll be a substantial degrading of the United States Army. Look at the threats we face. You know, I would advocate leaving 10,000 troops behind in Afghanistan. If we don't, we're going to have another Iraq. There is no way we're going to bring about stability in Iraq unless we increase the number of troops from 3,500 to about 10,000. There is no game plan to deal with degrade or destroy ISIL in Syria. We're training 60 people a month to go into Syria. They're recruiting about 1,000 a month in foreign fighters, and you'd have to be really crazy, I think, to join this operation to go in Syria, given the construct we've created for the Free Syrian Army.
You know,
this is not working.
Okay, Senator, I know you're a fairly modest guy, but the fact of the matter is you and Rick Perry are the only veterans in this race. And not that that should dramatically make a difference, but it does give you a different focus on things. And when you hear some of your opponents, Rand Paul comes to mind, and some others who have advocated a sort of a dialing back approach and be more more sympathetic to privacy needs and security needs that have to do with intelligence oversteps. What do you think of that?
Well, I think he's an outlier in the Republican Party. Number one, our homeland is at threat unlike any time I've seen before 9/11. Reducing our capability to monitor the enemy. We've been kicked out of Yemen because of the Houthi rebels backed by Iran. We have no eyes and ears in Syria at all. Syria is a perfect platform to hit this country.
Well, would we have had that, Senator, with boots on the ground, or is it just our intelligence failures there? Which is it?
Well, I think it's both. I think you're not going to defeat ISIL in Syria without a ground component. It won't be the Kurds. The only way you're going to destroy ISIL in Syria is to get the regional armies together. We'll be part of those armies, go in there and pull the caliphate up by its roots. But they're not going into Syria. The Arabs won't, unless you put Assad on the table because he's a puppet of Iran. We have no strategy. This president's going to pass the problem of Iraq and Syria and ISIL on to the next president. He is not going to degrade and destroy ISIL. His strategy is not even coming close to degrading and destroying ISIL, and they're getting more expansive in their reach. They're in Libya now. They're going to Egypt.
You know, what did you make of his comment yesterday, Senator, that it's sort of like whack-a-mole here? In other words, you hit, you know, a nest of these guys in one area. Presumably, you're then attacking them in another area. It's a zero-sum game, and we got to stop it because there's nothing to be gained from doing that.
I'm losing all respect for President Obama's commander-in-chief. He knows better. He has to understand that to degrade and destroy ISIL, you have to pull them up by the roots in Syria, that you got to get the Arabs involved, and the Arabs are not going to just fight ISIL. They want to take on Assad because that's like giving half of Syria to Iran. This president is more worried about keeping campaign promises not to go back into the Mideast than he is about protecting the homeland. His strategy is going to result, in my view, into a major attack on our homeland if we don't change it.
You know, I just wondered if you ever did become president. You know, you're not in that top 10 tier now. That could change.
Right.
But if you ever did become president, and given the fact that you've called for boots on the ground, a more aggressive foreign policy in this region of the world, when so many Americans are either just chagrined or bummed out or tired or war-weary, whatever you want to call it, Senator, how would you convince them as president that this is the right thing to do? They're tired of this. They're tired of the problems and the wars and our friends who became our enemies and our enemies who became even lethal assassins. They don't know who to trust. How would a President Graham convince them otherwise?
Well, you may be tired of fighting radical Islam, but they're not tired of fighting you, and they're coming here if we don't stop them over there. President Graham would listen to the military. I would put troops on the ground at sufficient levels in Iraq to make a difference. I'd have a couple of aviation battalions so the Sunni tribes would see American attack helicopters. They would fight better. I would embed at the battalion level to rebuild the Iraqi army. I would go to the Arabs and the Turks and get their armies together and put about 10,000 of us in the middle of about 70, 80,000 of them would go in and pull the caliphate up by its roots in Syria, would hold the ground, would drive Assad out, and would try to get the Alawites and the Sunnis and the Kurds and all other groups in Syria to live in peace again. That's going to take a long time. But I tell the American people, here's your choices. You either fight radical Islam over there, they're coming here. We need to partner better. We're an unreliable partner. I'd rebuild the military. We're going to have the smallest Navy since 1915, the smallest Army since 1940. If you're tired of fighting radical Islam, I'm your worst choice. Here's my policy toward radical Islam. Whatever it takes, as long as it takes, to defeat those guys so they don't come here. And if you don't like that approach,
when Donald Trump says it's a failed effort, when Donald Trump says that kind of thinking is a failed effort, what do you say?
I think he's right. You got to have a commander-in-chief to educate the American public. 72% of Iowa caucus goers believe we need more boots on the ground over there. Most Americans understand that radical Islam can't be compromised with. These guys are religious Nazis. The only way you defeat them is destroy them, and to do that in partnership with others is the only way to go. You got to do more than kill terrorists. Building a small schoolhouse in a remote region to help educate a poor young girl would do more damage to radical Islam than a bomb. This is a generational struggle. If you're looking for an easy way forward, I'm not your guy. If you're looking for a guy who understands the region, I've been to Iraq and Afghanistan 35 times. The surge did work. I know what doesn't work and what will. We can beat these guys. They're not 10 feet tall, but President Obama has no interest in beating these people. He's trying to run out the clock on his presidency and pass it over to somebody else.
Senator Graham, thank you very much. Good seeing you.
Thank you.